One, The Ray D'Arcy Show on RTE Radio One.
Now, Karen Tomkins joins me in studio, and Karen is a documentary maker, but they're documentaries with a difference, and Karen's going to tell us all about them. Good afternoon, Karen.
Good afternoon, Ray. Thanks for having me.
We'll grab people's attention because you actually go into people's homes, interview them, and make a documentary about them.
Yep.
Anybody.
Just ordinary people.
Yes, you're a gun for hire.
I suppose I am, if you put it like that.
And your business is called Treasure Vox.
It's the Treasure Vox, yeah.
Right, okay.
Vox with a V.
Yes, Vox with a V, yeah. So tell us how the idea came to you.
It actually came because of my nanny. So my grandmother was Phyllis Burke from Wexford, and I just always thought she had a fascinating story. Like all our grannies have brilliant stories. She was married at 15 and she made the old Sunday world years ago. At 34, she was the youngest grandmother in Ireland. She'd 8 children, and she was a grandmother at 34. So I grew up with all these lovely stories about her and, just resilience in the years of hardship. I mean, it wasn't all, kind of fun and games. So when it came to her 80th birthday, at that stage between the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren, there was 70. So what do you get when you're one of 70? Yep, yeah, huge family. Well, so what do you get when you're one of 70 for your grandmother for her 80th? Like, it's just a drop in the ocean. So my background is in radio. So I, at that stage, was working in as a news journalist. So
in WLR?
Yes, in Waterford. And I said, Nanny, could I just sit down with you for an afternoon and bring my microphone and tell me your whole story, tell me your life story. So she was delighted, and she was that kind of a woman who she would just tell you anything. You could ask her anything, and she was delighted to be asked. So what I did was I recorded with her for an afternoon all the years of her childhood and when she got married and what was it like being a mother at 16, being married then, by the time she was 16, she had her first baby, Breda. Asking her all of this, and then I turned that into a documentary. So I treated it like it was something I was making for a radio station.
Yes.
And so that was my birthday present.
What a beautiful present.
Yeah,
what a glorious present. And not just for her, but for everybody in the family.
Well, that's the thing. It was for her birthday, but actually it was a bigger gift for all her children and the grandchildren, great-grandchildren.
How many years ago was that now?
Yeah, so that was 11 years ago. She's 8 years dead this month, actually. Right. And that's the thing. It was lovely to have at the time, and she was really proud of it, listening back, and she was delighted. But when she died 8 years ago, I suppose it really came into its own then. And, the value of, you would hang now on every word that she said. 8 years on, I can still just, pop on my earbuds, press play and listen to her giving words of wisdom, like to me and to my children. And it's just, it's honestly, it's unbelievable. It's lovely. I love listening back to her sometimes.
So there was the germ of an idea.
Yeah.
And it came to life so brilliantly for you and your family that you thought, let's share this with everybody else.
Yeah, I just felt really blessed, and I tell people, oh God, I can listen back to my nanny anytime I want. And there was always this idea in my mind that this isn't done, and working in radio, and I make documentaries about like well-known people, or I'd interview for the news, high-profile figures, and you kind of think everybody has a story. It's not just the people who we know and we see in the media. Every ordinary person has an extraordinary story, everyone. And I always had this idea that just like my own grandmother, there's so many people out there who I wouldn't know, but if I sat down and asked them a few questions, it turns into a documentary.
Yes, it does. And unfortunately, when our elderly loved ones die, oftentimes their stories die with them.
Yep.
And this is a way of keeping those stories alive, isn't it?
It is, because do you know what? It's not just the story, it's the person telling it. It's the way they tell it. Do you know the way that you might have someone in your family just tells a story so well? Yeah. So it's that.
Now, just to give people an idea, so you brought in a couple of clips from ones you've done. Mm-hmm. And this is a Tipperary woman, and she's talking about her childhood. Did she have meningitis?
Yeah, so it was her very first memory, and she was only about 2 or 3 years of age at this stage, and she can actually remember being in hospital. She had meningitis, and she really, the meningitis back in the 50s, she wasn't really meant to survive.
I got meningitis, and I was not meant to live. My father had to carry all that on his own. They were getting these telegrams, saying that, that I was critical and on the critical list and to be prepared for the worst. And I was in the fever hospital in Thurles. I spent 8 weeks there. My father, how he described it was, he said it was a toss of a halfpenny. You know, he said that's how close I was, yeah.
And what age was that woman then when you did the interview?
So she's in her early 70s now.
Right, okay.
So, you know, the
And
memory
did
is there.
she commission it, or did somebody in her family commission it?
Yeah, this is the thing.
Yeah.
It was someone in her family,
Yeah.
and it's often the way.
Commission is the only word I have. What would you do?
Booking or
Yeah.
people contact me, and most of the time it's the children or the grandchildren of people, and they say, look, my mum has a brilliant story, or my granddad, please will you record with him? And sometimes, you know, I'll arrive at someone's house and they're laughing, going, oh, what have they roped me into now? Because they don't see the value of their stories, but it's their children, their grandchildren that know they want this captured, they want it recorded, more so than the person talking,
Yeah, and the quality is really good, because I suppose people could attempt to do this on their phones, but they'd get something that was substandard quality, and then they wouldn't know what to do with it then. But you're a professional, so you know what a good edit is.
I treat it like this is going to be broadcast on RTE or on a radio station. I treat it like that because to me, I'm all about the sound quality. And look, there's some people who will never get this done. And absolutely, take out your phone and record the story, record the voice. But if you want to bring it to that next level, you know, for me, it's really important to have good microphones and all of that. Yeah.
So we've talked about what you do. So give us the pitch then. When you're selling to somebody, what do you say to them?
I say that, you know, I record a life story and I turn it into a professional documentary, because all those ordinary stories that people think aren't maybe, you know, worthy of sharing, they really are. And it's like a validation of somebody's life, you know, that you can listen to them and you can make their journey, no matter how simple it was. It doesn't have to be award-winning stuff that they did in their life. You know, they might have just reared a family and got by in hard times. That's enough to make a brilliant documentary out of.
The treasurevox.ie, the treasurevox.ie. Now, we should tell people how much it costs, really.
Yep.
We? Yeah. Go on.
Do you know what? I'm all about like the radio side. I'm learning to be a business person. Right. So I do two options because, you know, just to give people the opportunity. One, it's the premium package where I would sit down with a person for 3 hours and I'll be asking loads of questions. I've done prep beforehand, so I'll know what to ask them. I don't go in blind. So I might record for 3 hours. I go away and turn that into the 1 hour documentary. So that's a premium package. So you get the full documentary and that's €449.
Right.
But with that, you get the full unedited stuff as well, because what's the point in me deleting it on my computer? You know,
of course,
you might as well have the full 3 hours as well.
And you, as we've heard, you put music behind it.
Yeah.
You might have greetings from people who are in Australia or Canada. And if there's any audio that people might have, even from videos, you can include that as well.
And that's lovely. Do you know, often for an 80th, I did a 90th birthday where the grandchildren exactly that were in Abu Dhabi. And so they sent over voice messages. And like, technology's amazing now, you know. So they were saying happy birthday, Grandad, and singing little songs. And they sent their messages. And it was just so emotional, you know. So not only is the person getting to tell their story, they're also hearing back then, you know, from family members. And it's all pieced together. Okay. I had another man that I recorded with was incredible. His parents' wedding was actually on Pathé News back in 1937. It was quite a high society wedding at the time. So, like, you know, to be able to access this audio for people and add it to their story really kind of brings it to a new dimension.
It's brilliant because we've been talking for a long time now. I remember Michael Harding was talking to us about something in Athlone Library, this could be about 10 years ago, where he was encouraging people to interview their grandparents because we're losing all that information and stories. And we've stopped at it a number of times over the years and never done anything about it, but you're actually doing something about it and making a business out of it. How's it going?
Going really well. Yeah. I mean, I only started this kind of before Christmas. And honestly, I was, you know, you start these things and you don't know, will I be explaining this forever to people? Do they get it? But actually people get it. And that's incredible. Yeah. And now people are contacting me and I'm going, sorry, how did you hear about me? Yeah. It's going really well. People do like that. They get the whole, the importance of it. And also, it's easier for me, a stranger, to ask their parents questions. Like, I would find this very difficult to actually record with my own mum and dad.
Well, both of you would feel self-conscious.
Yes, yeah. And there's questions, when you ask a man in his 90s, tell me about your wife and, what was she, describe her, and what was it that you fell in love with? And they really open up. Whereas if I was to ask my dad that, he'd be going, go away, I'm not telling you. So it's so much easier to be that stranger asking the questions.
Okay. I'm delighted for you, the treasurevox.ie, because you've had your health challenges.
Yeah.
And I suppose this suits now because you're your own boss.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's great. I don't have to explain things to myself anymore.
Yeah. How are you as a boss?
Really? Actually, sometimes I'm editing until 4 o'clock in the morning and I'm going, Karen, you wouldn't do this for anyone else, but you'll do it for yourself, because I need the headspace, to edit, to really edit well. Yeah. So when the kids are gone to bed, that's when I work best. So
on the Hospital Live last week, there was a story about platelets, because people give blood, but people know less about blood platelets. But to you, they are hugely important.
I've learned a lot about platelets over the last few years.
They're a lifesaver, really, aren't they?
They are. I have a blood disorder called ITP. So I have low platelets in my blood, quite simply. My immune system thinks that my platelets are, there's something to attack. Baddies, exactly. Yeah. And my body attacks them. So the normal platelet count, we'll say, is 150. You might get a blood test. You never even know about your platelets. But my platelets have been attacked to the point where I'm at 1, nearly 0. So it leaves you in a critical condition because you are at risk of bleeding. Platelets clot your blood. I think we all learned that in science when we were learning about the vascular system. Yeah. Platelets clot your blood. When you don't have any, there's a huge risk of a bleed to the brain. With just the slightest touch or a bump on your head, if you don't have platelets in your body, you will start to bleed out, essentially. And I know that sounds really dramatic. So that's what I discovered I had during my last pregnancy with Daisy, my little girl, which was a really difficult place to be, to have this blood disorder and to be pregnant at the same time. Thankfully, because of platelet donations, and that's what the Hospital Live programme was talking about, I did receive a transfusion of platelets in the very early stages when really, the pregnancy probably wouldn't have lasted and shouldn't have lasted.
Did you have to get a number of transfusions or just one?
I've had a number, but it got to the point where the first transfusion was really important, and then I started having blood plasma infusions. It's called immunotherapy, so it's a kind of a slower process. The platelet transfusion is emergency, throw those platelets into you quick, you need them. Right. But I'm the kind of, my body basically, even if you give me platelets now, well, not now, but when I was unwell, I would attack them as quick as they were coming in. Now, platelets are really valuable in hospitals. So if you have a patient who you're transfusing platelets to, whose body is just looking at them going, out the door again. It's not that they wouldn't give them to me, but it was almost a waste. They needed to look at other ways to treat me.
Did I read it correctly that one of your transfusions would be using the platelets from 1,000 donors?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah. So that's called immunoglobulin, IVIG it's called. And I know a lot of cancer patients would be familiar with this. So it's blood plasma and it boosts your immune system. I don't really know the science behind it. All I know is that for me, it took about 8 hours in a cancer ward to sit there every time, sometimes twice a week. And they come in these little glass bottles, like this bottle of Ballygowan, and it has to be really slowly infused into the body. And they were the thing probably for me mostly that got me through, having the ITP.
How are you now?
Really well, thank God. And I still have a plaster on my arm. I got my bloods tested this morning.
Right, okay.
I got my spleen removed. That's the last line of treatment, I suppose, when all the drugs don't work.
Because the spleen, tells your body to attack your platelets, is that it? Or something like that?
The spleen can be the site of destruction.
Right.
Then again, it might not be. So there's a 70% chance that if you take out the spleen of a patient who has this ITP, low platelet disorder, there's a 70% chance
what is
it'll
the
work.
spleen used for in a healthy body?
Your absolute chief of your immune system. It's where your immune system is.
So what
risk.
Now without a spleen,
Yeah, so I just have to be really careful. I take a low dose of antibiotic every day.
Right.
Obviously, COVID in a way helped because people were wearing masks much more. I try to be as healthy and as fit as I can, and I had it last September, my spleen removed. Thank God I haven't really had a cold or a sniffle since, so it's worked and my platelets
and you look
are
very
normal.
Healthy and you sound very healthy.
Yeah, thanks. That's really good.
And the business is going. I can imagine, and I don't know what you're going to do about this, there's going to be copycats of this.
Yeah, I don't think anybody else does this. And
Yes.
look at the population of the country. I can't do this all on my own, you know.
Right.
So I just love that this is being done for people.
Okay.
I don't feel...
You're very generous.
No, I don't. But I just see the reaction when people get it done. I can't do all these documentaries for people. So look, if somebody else starts it, well, good luck.
So there you go. Get a documentary made about your loved one's life. The treasurevox.ie. Karen Tomkins, great to have you in studio. Good luck with everything. Mind yourself. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Ray.